my channel. My name is Vivian and we are in my plant room right now, aka my bedroom. As you can tell, I changed up my hair. I decided to go silver and gave myself quarantine bangs because you know when you're stressed you do all kind of shit, right? As you can see, I have Big Mac right here, which I unboxed in the last video. It's been about 2 weeks since I've had him and he's been growing pretty well in this planter that I had. I was worried it would be too shallow, but honestly he's doing pretty fine. He even have a new leaf. Actually, let me show you right now. So you can see right here, this is his newest leaf. It's still kind of floppy because it just unfurled, but I think it'll get a little bit bigger. Isn't that so cute? But yeah, you can see this is my plant room, and basically I just shove all my plants in the corner of my bedroom in my very tiny apartment. So we're in this room because we're going to talk about the IKEA greenhouse cabinet. As you can see right behind me, I have it set up right here. And if you haven't heard of it yet, basically there's this new trend where people are turning their cabinets they got from IKEA into greenhouses because it looks super cute, super aesthetic, and it fits a small space very well. So the cabinet I will be talking today is called the Milsbo cabinet. Like I mentioned earlier, it's from IKEA and it's $199 right now. I am in the United States and I am about 9 miles away from the IKEA near me. So delivery was $50 and the total came out to be about $264 for me. I ordered this cabinet on June 20th and it arrived on July 15th, so it took about a month to arrive. When it arrived, the delivery service sent us an email saying that it's on the way. Now, I had some issues here with the delivery service because they decided to put the cabinet in a location that was not where they should have put in my apartment complex. So what happened was I spent 2 hours on the phone with customer service because they were on the phone with the delivery service trying to figure out where my cabinet went. It was a shit show and then I had to call them back the next day, and it turns out they put it in the mail room instead of the delivery room where they should have. And on top of that, they threw my invoice on the floor of the mail room as well. But I was able to get my cabinet in one piece, so that was all good. So this video is going to cover basically how I set up my cabinet, what items I bought for it, what I like about it, what I dislike about it, and just a general idea. It's been about 2 weeks since I last set up the cabinet, so I can tell you a little bit about what I really enjoy and what I don't enjoy with it. Before you get started, I highly recommend that you have at least 2 people helping you with this. It is completely doable with one. I did it myself, but it was pretty hard and I felt that there were a lot of struggles with holding up multiple glass pieces and generally moving the cabinet itself. You'll want to work in a space that's close to where you put your cabinet because this thing is about 100 pounds, so it was really heavy. And while it's not the most difficult thing to set up, it definitely was a pain to do so. So just letting you know, it took me a few hours to get this up. Actually, it took me 2 days, but that's because I was trying to drill a hole in it. I will talk more about why I did so, but overall, I would say the process is pretty good. The instructions is sufficient. It's just a very heavy piece of furniture. Alright, without further ado, let's go! The cabinet comes in 2 boxes. Each box weighs about 50 pounds. The cabinet comes with 3 shelves, so 4 levels. The max weight per shelf is 11 pounds. I opted to use 2 shelves, so 3 levels. You can adjust the height as you wish. When you start building your cabinet, you'll be building from the bottom up. This means you'll start with the legs, then bottom shelf, then the support beams, then the glass panels and top, and finally the doors. One important thing to know is that this shelf does not come with any holes for the cables to go through. Some people have opted to snake their cables through the center of the doors, but this means you'll have to leave it open a little, which decreases the humidity and is overall not very aesthetic. The other option is to drill a hole in the bottom shelf, which is exactly what I did. Now, pro tip. Drill the hole first before you assemble the rest of the cabinet. There are 2 layers of metal you will need to drill through, and it is a lot easier doing so without the constriction of the glass panels. I bought a drill and a step drill bit. I will link all the items I use in the description below. I bought everything from Amazon, except the cabinet, of course. None of these are sponsored, by the way. I just bought what other people have recommended or what looks good in the reviews. Now here's where I made my first mistake. This is the first time I've ever drilled anything, mind you. So what happened was, it took me 2 days to drill this hole because it was taking forever and I had to keep recharging the drill since I had not done so beforehand. It was after I drilled through the first layer later that I realized that I had set the bit to spin in reverse, and that's why it was taking forever to drill and I possibly did a lot of damage to this bit. But I'll have you know, that means I drilled through this hole using only sheer willpower, and I take great pride in that. My second mistake was that I did not go through the whole instruction beforehand, so I actually drilled the wrong spot than where I had originally wanted it to go. I wanted to drill the hole in the top right corner of the shelf, and I did it backwards, so it ended up on the front left corner instead. Then I had to drill a second hole in the bottom right corner of the shelf because the cables I had set up on the right side were not long enough to reach the left, so now I have two holes. Now looking back, I do want to say I'm really glad my holes end up in the front because the gaps between the sides of the shelf and the glass panel are very tight. Having holes in the front means that I can snake my cables between the front of the shelf and the door instead, and that works so much better than the sides would have. Anyway, while my drill was recharging, I decided to attach the lights to the shelf. The lights I got are the Monio's LT8 LED grow lights. It came with 6 light strips, each able to connect to each other or separately. Each light is 24 watts, which is really bright, so I highly recommend only using one per shelf, otherwise you might burn your plants. I also got the 2 feet wired ones, and they were long enough for my current setup. Now, I've been hearing that the adhesive that comes with these lights are pretty shit. My friend told me that her lights drop after a couple of months using them. I end up buying the Scotch indoor mounting squares and use the original adhesive on each end and 2 of the Scotch adhesive on the beam part, so 4 squares per light. It's holding up fine now after 2 weeks, but honestly you should probably use suction cups instead. Here, I've already drilled the holes and I'm setting up the glass panels. This part was the most difficult because they were really heavy and I had a hard time standing them while I screwed them to the support beams. After I got the glass panels in, I tightened the roof down. Here comes the doors. These are pretty easy to install. Once I was done, I started putting in the shelves with the lights. The way the lights hook up to each other is kind of a crisscross. I have snaked my wire that will go to the outlet through the left hole in the cabinet. This means that from the bottom to the middle shelf, my wire will connect to the right side of the 2 lights. Then from the middle shelf to the top shelf, my wire will connect to the left side of those 2 lights. I stuck my lights right in the middle of each shelf and found I had very little space to work with when plugging in the cable to the light. Just FYI. Now for the fans, I wanted to be extra as fuck, so I bought these Enermax RGB case fans, and unfortunately one of them was defective, so I had to get a reorder. Now the issue that came with this as well is that this was not meant for external use, and I had to hunt down the right adapters that will allow me to plug in to a regular outlet instead of a PC's motherboard. You will need the following 2 adapters: the SATA to USB adapter for the RGB lights, and the 3-pin to USB adapter for the actual fans. This also means you can control the RGB lights and fans separately, which is great for me because I wanted the fans to run 24/7 but the lights to turn off at night since this is in my bedroom. The lights have 10 presets as well as speed and brightness control. These fans are DC as well, not AC, so they are lower voltage, which is safer to use in humid spaces. That being said, none of these were made to run in a humid environment, so take precaution. I stuck the adhesive hooks under each shelf on each side of the grow lights and used wires to hang the fans. This provides a slight gap between the back of the fan and the side of the cabinet to allow better airflow. The more space you leave, the stronger the fan will be. I didn't want it to be too strong, so I left about an inch gap in between. Here's what the cabinet looks like without cable management. You can see how horrible the first hole looks compared to the second after I realized I really do only have 2 brain cells, but it be like that sometimes. I'm using these white cable covers to match my cabinet color. I cut them and adjust them to fit to my shelf. The adhesive is sticking in the front corners of the cabinet and the door hides them well. It makes everything look neat and tidy. Finally, I'm using the GoSun Smart Power Strip to automate my humidifier, RGB lights, fans, and grow lights. This works with Alexa and Google Home as well, but I opted to set it up manually through the GoSun app and put everything on a schedule. It's very easy to set up when you want each plug to turn on and off. Note that all of your appliances must be set to on. The plug itself will determine what turns on and off and when. I set all my lights to turn on at 9 AM and turn off at 11 PM. My humidifier is on for 10 minutes 4 times a day every 6 hours. You don't want it on for too long, otherwise your plants will melt. The fans are on 24/7 to prevent mold. Finally, I weather strip using the 3M strips, and I only did the top and side of the doors. This helped keep the humidity in a lot better. I'm using the govi Bluetooth humidity monitor so that I can see how humid the cabinet stays at all times through my phone and how often I need to turn on the humidifier. So you can see what my cabinet looks like right now. I've changed out a lot of plants, added new ones, got rid of some. Here I have recently cut up my pink princess into 6 or 7 cuttings. So they are living here until they develop some roots. They're doing super well, so I'm really happy with that. You can see right here the temperature is 87 degrees and the humidity is 80%, so it's pretty hot and humid in there. And finally, on the bottom shelf, here's my humidifier. I have a couple of charcoal reds and my red moon as well. I went a little scissors happy recently, so there's a lot of props. There's my red moon cutting as well as my charcoal red cutting. But yeah, overall, here's the final form. Alright, so here are some thoughts I have of the cabinet now that it's been about 2.5 weeks since I last set it up. The first one is, it definitely needs some weather stripping, or you'll have to find a way to get rid of the gaps between the door and the cabinet itself. When I first set it up, I would say the cabinet stayed around 54 to 60% of humidity on average. Now, if you don't need that humidity to be super high, this is totally fine. But that's the resting humidity of my room itself, so I wanted something that's higher than 60 degrees. After weather stripping, I was able to get it up to around 80% of humidity on average, which is perfect for me. The second thing is that this cabinet stayed around 80 degrees Fahrenheit, which is pretty warm. And when it's warm, the water dries up a lot faster from the plants. So I find that I need to water them more frequently, about 4 to 5 days instead of once a week. Even with the added humidity, the topsoil or the substrate do seem to dry faster than usual, again because it's very warm in there. The third thing is the humidity overall. Now I have my humidifier on the bottom shelf, and I would say about 50% of that humidity travels up to the middle shelf and about 10% only travels up to the top shelf. That means that at the very top is not as humid as the bottom. This isn't too big of a deal for my plants because they don't need that high of a humidity, but for those who want a more even amount, you'll probably want to switch out the glass shelf for wires instead. I know some people have done that and they've had a lot of success with it. The glass shelves also do limit the number of heights that you can have in your cabinet. For example, the cabinet comes with 3 glass shelves. I opted to use only 2, but I find that for my very tall plants, they're limited to only the bottom shelf. And the cabinet itself isn't very big, so if you have a lot of tall plants but a lot of short ones as well, you might find difficulty trying to find the right height for your cabinet. Some people have figured out a workaround solution by replacing either all of the shelf or leaving one in the middle and then having a pegboard on the back instead, so that the short plants can hang from that board instead of having it rest on the shelf. Other people have used shorter standing shelf in their cabinet as well. There are multiple ways around this, but for me, definitely I find that I have more tall plants than short, and that I can be utilizing a lot more space than I currently am. Lastly, the space between each shelf is very tight. So initially I wanted the wires to go down the side of the cabinet, but a lot of the wires did not fit. So what happened was I wired them to go down the front corners of the shelf, which help a bit more. There's a little bit more space there, so it will be sufficient, but you'll find that the spaces are just very tight and you just have to do a lot of squeezing around the shelves. Ultimately, this cabinet isn't meant to be a greenhouse, but I think it's good enough if you're not going for something super high maintenance. So overall, I think this is a good choice for small apartments. It is super aesthetic, comes in 2 colors, black and white. I chose white because it matches all of my furniture and I love it to death. It is pretty expensive. You're looking at starting with $200 just for the cabinet, and it will go up based on what features you add. Even more if you decide to replace all of the glass shelf with wired shelves instead and add a pegboard. I personally recommend it. Again, it does not replace an actual greenhouse, but I think it is sufficient enough for plants that like higher humidity. And finally, please check out the Instagram account called IKEA Greenhouse Cabinet on Instagram. I will leave a link down below. They have pictures of so many cabinets that people have created, and it's really good for getting inspired by how you want to set it up. They not only post the Milsbo cabinet, but the other 2 popular ones as well from IKEA. I also recommend joining the IKEA Greenhouse Club on Facebook. is a group dedicated to building IKEA greenhouses, and you'll be able to find a lot of resources as well as inspiration on how other people have set up their cabinet. I'm pretty active on that group, and I do have a post there as well, so if you check that out, you can get a little bit more details on how I set this up as well as how other people have. I also link that below. But other than that, thank you so much guys, and I hope you enjoyed this video. It took a long time to make, and I wanted to get it out last week, but honestly life has just been very stressful, so I apologize for that. But it was a really fun project to do. I highly recommend trying it out. It's really fun and very fulfilling to see your plants thriving in it. If you like my video, please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!